Has Blizzard killed goats? Well, probably not, but they may have finally given us enough tools that we can do it ourselves. Good morning, everyone. It's Tuesday, it's 7 a.m. I'm in an airport restaurant on my last day in Canada, and, well, esports never sleeps. Blizzard put out patch notes for the PTR with a lot of pretty big changes, and Twitter and social media has been going crazy with discussing these changes, as they usually do. So we thought we'd get ahead of that and kind of talk about what changed, who are the winners, who are the losers, and kind of what you can expect for the meta that's going to be hitting live probably before Overwatch League starts. No idea on whether that's actually going to be the case or not, but I would hope so, because that would make the start of the Overwatch League pretty exciting. Now, if you're the kind of person who likes testing and actually wanting to see how things work in a custom game or in scrims, well then you're going to want to be checking out the stream this Friday at 7 p.m. Pacific. Twitch.tv/Jane as usual, but I can't tell you what we're gonna do on Friday, but I'm just gonna say that you should probably be there because it's gonna be a lot of fun, and I'm not gonna be the only one involved. Shifty eyes. Anyway, 7 p.m. Pacific, Friday, be there. And last thing before I get into the patch notes, the Peasant Cup signups. If you're not aware of what the Peasant Cup is, it's a tournament, one-day only tournament that's happening on the 12th for subscribers. So if you are on the Discord, you can find out more information about how to get involved in the tournament by checking out the Peasant Cup channel on the Discord. Check that out, it's going to be a lot of fun. And also, part of this patch, new spectator features came out. So there's new third-person spectating, as well as other features, such as being able to tell when people are actually kind of stunned, slept, frozen, or hit with honest biotic nade. So there's going to be some really cool spectator features coming out, and we're going to be premiering them during the January 12th stream with the Peasant Cup. So check that out. Okay, so what actually changed? Now, there's 4 things that changed in this patch, and the first one, the largest one, and the one that has the largest ramifications across the entire game is that armor itself, how it works, has changed. Previously, what armor did was that it reduced the incoming damage by half or 5, whichever was less. So what that means is basically if you dealt 4 damage to a target, if it was armored, it would actually take 2 damage because that's half. But if you dealt 100 damage to something, the armor could only ever reduce that incoming damage by a maximum of 5. However, that number, 5, as the maximum damage reduction number, has been reduced dramatically to 3. So the max amount of incoming damage that is reduced by armor is now 3, which has a large amount of changes. And the percentage increase of damage done is actually going to be based on how much of the pellet damage was per hero. So heroes like Widowmaker and Hanzo, they have 1 pellet, whereas heroes like Tracer and other shotgun heroes have a large amount of pellets, but those pellets do fewer damage, which makes armor reduce their damage at a much higher rate. Now, damage reduced and healing effectiveness kind of go hand in hand here, so not only is this allowing shotgun and spray type heroes to do more damage, but it's also indirectly reducing the impact of healers, because they cannot heal the same effective amount of incoming damage. The changes to armor are really significant for quite a few heroes, as it increases their effective damage against armor. If you take a look at the graph here, you're going to be able to see the highlights of probably the most important changes to heroes who are going to see the largest increase in effective damage done. There are 2 indicators, one for heroes' headshots against armor, as well as just a hero's base damage against armor. These changes are pretty big depending on which hero you're looking at. For example, Hammond is dealing an increased damage of 40%, so long as he's within the fall-off range of 15 meters, which is still pretty good. The other important characters to look at are going to be Sombra, who sees an increase of between 18 and 25% against armor targets, and Tracer, who of course gets an increased damage dealt against armored when headshotting. On top of those changes, the armor that you gain from Brigitte's rally now goes away after 30 seconds. And this is a pretty big deal because the characters that benefited from having armor underneath their shields, notably Zarya and Zenyatta, no longer have the ability to snowball that value between different teamfights. So the big change here is that Brigitte's ultimate will only ever affect one teamfight, which is pretty big. On top of that, not only is her personal armor less effective at reducing damage, but her healing output is less effective because it heals less incoming damage per second, and the overheal from her armor pack, for example, is also reduced in effectiveness. So that change, on top of just armor being overall nerfed, means Brigitte basically got slapped silly by this patch. And there's other things, even on top of this, that are going to make Brigida's place in the meta a lot smaller. The third change that was made, and the one that a lot of people are currently freaking out about, is Reaper's buff. Now, Reaper's lifesteal has gone from 30% to 50%, so he has 50% lifesteal, which is absolutely crazy. However, there's no other changes, so Shadow Step is still a thing. And finally, the fourth change is to D.Va. So D.Va's defense matrix now goes on a 2-second cooldown after its usage, which has some pretty wide sweeping impacts, but at least on the higher level plays, this is also going to be that it's a lot easier to play around her matrix, specifically with like trying to use Zarya's Graviton without getting it eaten or getting it baited, as well as comboing other ultimates into Zarya's Graviton. Now, Reaper on this patch is interesting because his lifesteal was affected by both his passive as well as the armor nerfs. So here's what Reaper's changes look like on live currently. And of course, all of these graphs that I'm about to show you assume that all of the pellets hit, which in a real world situation isn't going to be the case, so play along. Now, considering the new Reaper buff, here's what it looks like. He gets a 66% buff against unarmored targets. Now, if you consider the armor nerf as well, he's doing 90% more lifestealing against armored targets, or 100% more lifesteal against armored targets when he hits headshots. So those four things are what the patch notes changed. Armor's been nerfed, Brigida's rally was nerfed, Reaper's lifesteal was buffed, and then D.Va was nerfed with her defense matrix. So who are the overall winners of this patch? So Sombra, Orisa, Hog, Bastion are all way better against armor, dealing in some situations between a 20 to 40% increase against armored targets, assuming they're in their fall-off. Now, Tracer's a little bit of an interesting one, because when just dealing damage normally, her damage was not actually increased. Her pellet damage is 6, which means that whether we're talking about new armor or old armor, she's still dealing 3 damage per pellet. However, if Tracer's landing headshots, the damage of those pellets increases from 7 to 9. So if you're really going to get value out of Tracer, you need to be hitting headshots within fall-off, Tracer's fall-off being 10 meters. So Zarya is going to be able to deal slightly increased damage, and as well as since armor was nerfed and Zarya doesn't have any armor, well, she has become more tanky in relation to the other tanks on the roster. However, the big thing with Zarya, especially in pro play, is that her grab is going to be a lot easier to land and place where you want it to without having to do things like grav corners. In addition, the combination ults with your Graviton, such as Blizzard, Dragon Strike, Barrage, any of those are also going to be easier to connect with your Graviton because it's going to be harder for D.Va to eat those. Spam heroes such as Hanzo, Junkrat, and Pharah are all buffed due to the rally changes. It's going to be a lot easier to take out and finish off the targets like Zenyatta when they don't have 300 HP, and some of that is armor under shields. Roadhog, much like Zarya, is also receiving an indirect buff since the tanks with armor are going to be having their tankiness reduced. Roadhogs take a breather. That 50% damage reduction is completely separate damage reduction from armor, so in relation to the other tanks, Roadhog has received a buff in that department. Additionally, because he is another shotgun hero and has a large number of pellets, his effectiveness against armor has dramatically increased. Bastion is another character. He still has an improved tankiness compared to targets that do have armor from his passive, and I don't think since he was buffed last patch that we've seen anyone really take advantage of his hero yet and his kit. He's a lot stronger than people give him credit for. So all in all, you're hearing the heroes that I'm talking about, Orisa being another one who's even better against armor and still has her own fortify. In solo queue, this probably means you're going to be seeing a lot more bunker comp, a lot more things with Orisa, Roadhog, Bastion, and because of those things, maybe Torbjorn and Symmetra. So with Reaper's increase in play, the counters to Reaper are probably going to receive an indirect buff. This goes with McCree and Brigida. So Brigida's stun is still extremely useful in taking out Reaper or close range targets just in general, and dive targets. However, McCree's flash is also going to be a good counter to Reaper, as well as having that nice longer range damage. In terms of supports, pretty much everyone here is a winner except for Zenyatta, who received a very obvious nerf from the rally changes. Mercy, of course, pairs well with long range damage dealers, of which we will see a rise in use because of the armor changes, the Reaper changes, and the Brigida changes. Lucio is probably going to see a buff because he works extremely well with Reaper. Full Dive might be making a return, so he's going to work well in that sort of composition. And then Ana is really good against Reaper, still good against tanks, and can still have that place to combo in dive compositions that require nano boosts as a win condition. As well, Nano with that 300 HP insta-heal is still pretty crazy. Moira, well, she's still more or less irrelevant outside of like Platinum. And honestly, I think it's probably time Blizzard takes a look at making Moira just less shit. So who are the losers from these changes? Well, Winston and D.Va both have had their damage more or less remain the same against armor, except for D.Va's micro missiles. Their overall tankiness has been reduced because of the armor changes. Rein can also tank less, and this is going to be a pretty big deal for Rein, especially since he was a kind of character who liked to absorb a little bit of incoming damage to his personal health pool to keep his shield alive for longer. I'm overall not convinced that this is going to be the return of Dive. I still think that in the current meta, CC is exceptionally strong. However, if we are going to more longer range damage dealers, such as Pharah, Hanzo, snipers, characters of that variety, then the best heroes that work with them are going to be Winston and D.Va. Winston and D.Va have my mobility. D.Va, she might have been nerfed with the defense matrix, but she can still fly, defense matrix, and launch missiles all at the same time. That's crazy. So, yeah, D.Va might have been nerfed, but I still think she's pretty much irreplaceable in certain compositions, specifically in Dive. Soldier receives a nice little buff with his damage output against armor, but he's still extremely diveable. He's outclassed in the hit scan range by McCree for shorter range engagements, and by snipers for longer range engagements. It's also harder for him to confirm kills, and his ultimate is, again, maybe not the most powerful thing in the world. As for Doomfist, his mobility nerfs still pretty much have destroyed him, and Doomfist was a character who saw really good success against a large number of tanks that he could just bash around and disrupt, but with tanks moving out of this meta, I think that Doom is actually going to become even less viable. And when you are kind of reducing his mobility was really necessary to kind of go for those dive plays, have those kill boxes set up, and take out squishies. But with his mobility kind of removed, and his main strength going against tanks also kind of removed from the equation, Doomfist is probably going to fall further and further into disuse. It's unlikely that we will see him anywhere in pro play. So here's the question. Is Goats dead? Well, probably not. And this is for a couple reasons. So the big one and the main reason why Goats is still probably not dead is the fact that pro teams have been spending the last however many months practicing, refining, and perfecting Goats compositions and other tank-heavy compositions. That institutional knowledge isn't going anywhere. They still have that, and if anyone tries to develop a new meta, take a look at how Goats was originally played back in the Pit and the Beat tournaments so many months ago compared to Goats now. So that composition, that meta has gone through a incredible level of innovation, and any new meta that goes against it would be starting from scratch. And it takes time to build up knowledge and an understanding of how to run these metas and be successful with them against however many comps they run into and on however many maps they play on. So expect the early days of this meta to just be variations on Goats because it's the easiest thing for teams to actually transition into, and it's a huge risk to try and commit to a brand new direction, brand new meta composition or strategy. The Flash and Bash composition with McCree and Brigitte, that's a very strong composition and will remain strong. In addition, you'll probably see the return of Hack and Slash, or instead of Hack and Slash, you could have Hack and Pharah or Hack and Tracer. So probably you'll see Sombra Tracer, Sombra Pharah, and Sombra Genji compositions become more effective. EMP is still insanely powerful, and if you are going to see kind of return to dive, those were the compositions that I'd primarily be expecting. However, the big dark horse of this meta patch is, I think, going to be the Chinese cheese composition. Now, Chinese cheese originally got its name from Zarya Doomfist, Doomfist acting as the main tank, but with Hammond being buffed and Zarya being buffed by this patch, if Goats compositions do stick around, I think that the Zarya Hammond dive composition, such as you could have Zarya Hammond Pharah Sombra or something like that, that composition is going to be really strong. So Goats has certainly had its effectiveness reduced, but I don't think it's going to be gone entirely. However, one of Goats composition's largest counters, the Hammond and the Zarya, or other variations of Hammond play, such as Hammond D.Va or Triple Tank Hammond, these compositions, I think, are going to be pretty powerful. So if I was going to make a prediction about kind of the start of pro play on this new meta patch, I'd be saying look out for hemming the compositions. If you're just a solo queue player, the things that you have to know is that tanking has just become a little bit harder. Bunker compositions just got a lot better, so I hope you enjoy seeing Orisa and all the fun that gets paired with her in solo queue. And overall, while Reaper might have gotten a lot stronger, Reaper is still very easily countered due to the nature of a short-range hero, as well as the very shallow nature of his kit. You know, he has Wraith, but Shadow Step really isn't a combat ability. So yes, Reaper will kind of be as like a disincentive to playing goats, but if it's ever whipped out, it would be counter-comped, and it would be just another node on the circle of counters. That's all. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you this Friday at 7 p.m. Pacific in LA. Bye now.